immersive data look like? It's like, we're talking about immersive learning, what does immersive data look like? Part of it is how rich is that data, and what is the information that we can glean from things that we have now? The first two photos on the bottom are what can we get from a biometric perspective from your firefighters. And I know the DC folks have a phenomenal project on that, and as does West Metro in Colorado, and I'm not gonna talk a lot about it, but there's a ton of information. I don't care whether it's a Whoop band or a Fitbit, or Garmin watch, or an Apple, whatever your choice of technology is, the information about you and how you are doing work is massive. We don't use it. The same with the picture on the right. For people that know me, I do a fair bit of, my other university, do a fair bit of work in motorsport safety. One of the things that has intrigued me for the past couple of years is that sensor that is exactly that small. That's a person's finger, and that's a sensor. That sensor is in that glove. That glove is a race car driver's glove. That sensor sends biometric information to the race team in the garage area during the course of the operation, during the course of the event. And people are like, well, they can do that because they have money. Like, yeah, but the technology already exists, so why can't we adapt it? At the same time, again, so Formula One uses it, IndyCar uses it a little bit. So you're talking about massive layout of race course. Certainly greater, with the exception of the wildfire sphere, certainly greater than our nice, tidy, compact built environment. So the question, the argument always comes up, and I get it's like, well, the fire glove has got to meet a certain standard, and it's got to be TPP rated, and we got to have the flexibility and all that stuff. I agree completely, 100%. That race car driver's glove has the same TPP as your fire glove. So don't tell me it can't happen. The same with accelerometers. Why we don't have accelerometers and the ability to measure impact in fire helmets is beyond me. No, I was gonna say we. All right, so concussions in sports are a challenge, right? Particularly in youth sports. We're starting to kind of delve into what that looks like with young adults, high school sports, under high school sports, college sports, is the repeated effect of trauma to the head or to other parts of the body. There are some really good pre-tests and post-tests, easily generalizable to the fire service, that if you had a member take a whack to the melon, that you can do that standing on the street. But we have to do that. It's also not enabled by technology. Again, if we had a chip, we're probably not gonna chip our firefighters. People would think, I talk about that and people are like, we're not gonna do that. I get it. But there should be one in our helmet, maybe one in our hood, probably one in our gloves. And again, this isn't expensive technology, but yet we resist the ability to do that. And now look, I'm not under the illusion that this is easy, because there's data privacy and there's like, what do we do with it and all that stuff. You can make it, because we've looked at it relative to Apple Watch technology into the exposure tracker, is you can pull it over, look at it, we don't keep it, you send it back. It's yours, it doesn't rest in the platform. So be able to do things like that in a smart way. So the next piece after that is like, what's the human response to fires and emergencies and training? How about the human and the tool interaction? And again, for tools that have and create data, probably not getting this out of a set of irons, you're probably not getting this out of a very low tech nozzle, but every single one of these things, your portable radio, absolutely a mini computer on your belt today, the way they're built and constructed. Fire pump module collects a truckload of data. Your FCBA collects data, your extrication tool collects data. Why aren't we pulling that out and be able to use it with and understand how we interact with the tools and technology to be able to understand effectiveness? And I'll tell you in a minute why we don't. But, well, that's really interesting.
Let's give it a click on the computer.
Okay. That's not the one I wanted.
I'm really interested.
All right. So,
We can get it.
no, it's no, it came up black. That's what happens when you come from a Mac to antiquated Microsoft technology.
Oh, that's fair.
It's.
I agree.
Yes.
So we'll leave the black screen up there, and I'll try to fumble my way through it. So you look at, actually, no, go back one to the tools and equipment.
So you look at it and go, okay, can we, should we, from a measurement of things that make a difference? Portable radio, number of transmissions, length of transmissions. Let's grab that. Fire pump, how much water we're flowing, what the apparatus operator is doing, how much water is going through it. SCBA, rate of breathing, rate of cylinder, number of breaths, rate of cylinder depletion. Extrication tool gets a little bit wonky because you're talking about tool movement and how that works in time to extrication. But you put those things, and would it be nice if our nozzles are just a lump of steel most times, but nozzle open, nozzle closed. When does that happen? And now overlay that with the biometric information about our firefighters. Now we have a robust data set that we can look at and understand the full package and the full course of what's going on the fire ground with our people or even in the training environment. So the reason that doesn't happen so far, and we're working on it, is most of the manufacturers are like, that's our data, it's proprietary, we don't want to share it. Cool, I understand that. You worked really, really hard to develop it. You don't want to share it. Particularly for the ones that are depicted on the screen, they work really, really hard to get massive market share in the fire service. It's fine. Just give me your data scheme. I don't need any data on it. Just give me the data scheme so we can figure out how to overlay all this stuff together with again, biometric information. Because then now we have a complete picture. We can see when you're having a certification, you're doing a certification test, and you know the evaluator fails the student because they didn't do the evolution correctly as a pump operator, and the student's like, well, yeah, I did, and they're like, well, no, here's the data that clearly shows this is what you did. And again, whether it's a simulated environment or a real fire pump environment. But stacking those data sets and incorporating those together is where we start to get better information about what exactly it is that we're doing on the fire ground. Not one for a black square. There's nuggets of hope out there. And I won't mention the brand because I want to be very kind of Switzerland here, but there is a fire ground accountability system that has been developed that takes data from SCBA, data from portable radios, data from your staffing solution and your daily schedule to be able to create that screen that when it's operating on the fire ground, you can see how much air the people have, you can see if their portable radio is on, level of battery, are they on the right channel, where you assign them to operate, and when they need to come out. Again, adding to that, what would the benefit be if we had biometrics on top of that and go like, all right, that human's heart rate is at 180% of their maximum, we need to get them out before they have a medical event. So this is commercially available today, and it works. It's a little labor intensive. You need a command aid probably to do it and do it right because the incident commander is going to have one eye on both. But there are abilities to start knitting some of this together. The challenge is money, like everything else. It's the bane of our existence, particularly people that run fire training agencies. I'll use it as an example only because it's been on TV. It was on TV during like the NFL playoffs and stuff. The Matthew McConaughey getting rained on Salesforce AI ad. That Salesforce Salesforce owns QuickBooks. In 1 year, QuickBooks spent now you also use QuickBooks because they're a ubiquitous product to do billing and paying bills, stuff like that. Spent $2.5 billion with a B, billion dollars on R&D, on development of products to make QuickBooks better. A piece of financial software to allow people to pay their bills. 2.5 billion with a B. The fire service software market is counted in hundreds of millions, if that. So our challenge and why I appreciate so much what NATFD and the research group is doing is we need to be able to get this to people that are going to invest in the fire service. Because there's not enough market share for people to look at this and go, I'm going to make money. Because the fire service, as much as we don't like to think so, the fire service is a tiny little market. And it's really, really hard. The only way you're going to make a little bit of money in the fire service is to start with a lot. I mean, and that's unfortunately the reality. So but it can't, the elephant can't overwhelm the power of the possible. For us to be able to look at it and go, okay, how do we do that? And then the reality is too, is elephants are an endangered species, so I don't care if you eat it one bite at a time, you're still breaking the law. However, cows, pigs, chickens, fish,
vegetables, dairy products are not protected. You can eat them as much as you want. By saying that, we need to steal from other people. We need to steal liberally, and that's borrow with the intent to keep. Stealing is actually a crime, borrow with the intent to keep is not. Borrow from other industries that started to figure it out. On the left, that is the control room for an EMS sim lab. Owned by a hospital, they dump all the money into it. And everything from intubations, IV starts, cardiac, everything that you can think a paramedic can do, you can do in there. And we had some very, very senior paramedics, people that have been credentialed as a paramedic and certified as a paramedic for over 20 years. That when they got in a sim lab, they have typical skepticism of a firefighter, right? Like, fine, I'll go. And they got in there like, holy cow, it's the best training I've ever had. Because it allowed them in a repeatable manner to do the skill, and if they screwed up, it wasn't a one and done. They're like, all right, reset the machine, reset the mannequin, let's do it again. And they're saying the middle one is that one step further, an initial BLS EMT class. It's hard to see on the photo, but that's a mock-up of an ambulance. They're loading a patient on a stretcher to be able to go through those things, and it's actually the patient is a mannequin, so you can carry it all the way through. And then the last, and probably for us, one of the places, and I think Dr. Kate mentioned it too, is to borrow liberally from the military. They have simulation out the wazoo in a lot of different ways, particularly relative to command and control, which is one of the ways that I think, again, we can provide the ability to have sets and reps in a no harm, no foul environment that allows people to build their skills in a way that improves outcomes. So if we can't fund its development, if we can't find somebody to pay for it, are there opportunities for us today in a sensible way to borrow those technologies from other people? So that's what I got for data in training. Oh, I like nailed.
Basically, like an old, put a quarter in it outside of Kmart, and the little thing would fly, and that was simulation, right? So even if we're borrowing, and a lot of people have been using that story, hey, the military does it, but there still seems to be the adoption issues, right? And I think a lot of that we've talked about today. What do you think helps solve that? What needs to happen so that people do look at it and say, okay, yes, let's try what the military's been doing for 100 years?
So I think there's a lot of little pieces to that. Is there, unless your fire department owns an airplane, being in a flight simulator is not going to do you any good, right? Let's back up. Why did the military? Let's start with the very ground up, basically. Why did the military get into simulation training? Because it's really, really expensive when we wound a soldier, kill a soldier, or crash a really expensive airplane in training. Same with us in the fire service. Fire apparatus aren't quite airplane costs now, but they're getting well, actually, yeah, you can buy a pretty nice airplane for $2 million. Firefighter injuries are incredibly expensive. A firefighter injured in a regional fire training school not near me, not too far away from me, on a Sunday, like 3 weeks ago, spinal fracture, that person's never gonna be a firefighter again because they got wounded in training. Well, I'm sorry, and I get yelled at for using this term all the time. That's just dumb, right? We need to be better than that. So I think one is, let's go back to why did they start? Because it makes sense, particularly now economically. It also makes sense for them dispersion. Like they cover, you look at the military, the United States military covers, with some exceptions, the entire world. How do we get the same quality of training across the world? We're not talking now about Oklahoma, Texas, the Dakotas, we're talking about the planet. So it provides the ability to have it dispersed and diffused. So those are two. Three is, let's look at their command and control software. Like, what do they use it for? Will they use it for battleground? They use it for, armed conflict. Okay. Are there elements of that we can pull out and be able to run simulations for widespread disasters and widespread emergencies and disasters? Again, something we struggle with at the national level and the local level, and all disasters start local, in part because how do we respond in the early part of the front end of now we have to flip our response brain that I'm not managing this one building fire, I have to make decisions for my entire community, which is a significant different metric than I would if I was dealing with that one house. So I think just looking at what do they use it for, why did they make that choice, and how can we pivot that and use either a portion of their technology or reach out to their vendor and go like, hey, have you ever thought about this and try to get it pointed in our direction. You're right, you're 100% right, Evan, it's not as easy, like, I'm gonna go buy that and plug it into my computer and it's gonna work marvelously and do everything I want it to do, because again, we don't have some of the same things they do, but I think philosophically why, the methods that they use, and then the things that they do to leverage that training in the virtual environment is really important. What else? Back to you.
Oh, thank you, John.
Thank you, I appreciate the opportunity.
So John, one question as you walk away. You know, you're working in the data space now with the Data Institute. And where do you see where is it most likely training officials will be able to capture data from the systems that are out there to inform our decisions and the curriculum we're developing? Where's the most likely candidates to find those data sources?
So my initial answer is not gonna make me any friends, because I think my initial answer is you're gonna have to create it. You're gonna have to decide, hold on a second, Michelle. I think you're gonna have to decide what are the things that are important for your agency to explain and to describe, particularly as it relates to immersive learning. Like, well, what am I gonna get out of that I'm not getting out of typical hands-on? And I think the repeatability, the fidelity becomes that. There are, and I think some of that is also linked to changing what we measure and how. Like, what we focus on, is it test scores, is it physical fitness, is it task on time, is it student, like, what are those measures? And I think some of that too is to go back to the organizations you provide training for, and at the same time, a parallel conversation with your boss, the people paying the bills, and go like, what do you need in order, like, to help me explain what we're doing there? Michelle, you had either I said something wrong to you.
No, but NARIS was the first thing I thought of, because related to what you're saying about, because some of this is very much targeted to an individual jurisdiction, you can look at the data that's going to be coming out of NARIS and help you identify potentially what your training priorities and training objectives might be based on, your fatalities in state, whether they're matched to a certain type of incident, whether there's communications issues. I think the additional data sets that augment the NARIS incident data will help provide one option as a data source for that.
So, yes, and let me calibrate that for 1 second. 100%, I think for all of us that operate in the training sphere is response data should help inform training program development, right? It's like, I had a department that was doing high angle rope rescue, and their tallest building in the community is like a 3-story board. It's like, what are you doing? Like, let's use the data that we have, and that's one of the things that will be good coming out of NARIS, is like, look, what's going on in our communities, and what are the emerging trends that we can use in order to do that. Whether downstream at some point, whether there's a training module in there that will allow you to do that, I think that's a different kettle of fish. But yeah, absolutely, using the experience, the response experience in your community to help drive that training program, it becomes really, really important.
And Tom Jenkins from FSRI is going to be at our conference in September, talking specifically on NARIS and the data outputs and how does it impact training. So we're starting the conversation.
Love that guy.
Hearing a lot of the conversation, and specifically, what are you attempting to measure? Is there an opportunity here amongst all the orgs represented for us to build some basic awareness about performance management, quality management? Because a lot of this is, are we measuring the numbers or the outcome of it? And I found myself in a lot of conversations recently talking about the need for the fire service to shift from public administration. Here's a budget, staying within it. Do we can versus shifting to a public policy conversation where it's what are you attempting to achieve? What is the best way to achieve it? There's still perhaps advocacy for additional resources, but it's understanding what to do versus just managing within a so much of this conversation really is leaning into that, so that performance measurement, quality management, policy evaluation conversation, and skill set needs to be raised.
That's one of the reasons why, I'll be a homer for a minute. One of the classes that Oklahoma State has in their graduate program is public policy evaluation.
Mhm.
And part of the reason that we don't do it is because it's hard, right? It takes time. But what the richness you get out the other end of going like, we worked on public policy development, now we're working on public policy evaluation, to be able to see that entire spectrum becomes a massive insight into what matters for your community or for whatever your tribe is that you've worked with.
I think especially if we do see that, unfortunately, the federal government pulls out of a lot of services, more local, state and local tribal are gonna have to conduct public policy activities to determine how to meet that goal.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. What's important to the community versus what thought it was before.
All right, thank you much.
No, thank you.